Got my coffee and today's guest here with me, so we're ready to roll. Welcome to our Circular Coffee Break podcast, where we will be casually talking about everything circular and beyond. Now, if you're a frequent listener, already know, the podcast is actually our idea or our contribution to build a circular economy community, to share ideas, insight, and experience that can help all of us accelerate the transition towards a sustainably circular world. And that means it's not about us here sitting in front of the microphone, but it's about all of you out there listening. And we would be very eager to hear from you. We've heard from some of you already with suggestions for guests, with feedback, with ideas, but please let that flowing and send your ideas and thoughts to us, either as a comment on our webpage, circularcoffeebreak.com, or directly to our email, circularcoffeebreak@gmail.com. We're always looking forward to hear your thoughts and ideas, and we're actually looking forward to implement some of them as we go forward. So grab your coffee, or naturally tea if you prefer, get comfortable, and let's start the conversation. Our guest today is a dynamic leader in the area of operations, strategy, and performance with a very wide experience from different industries. She began her career as an analyst at Accenture in the communications and high-tech practice, where we actually had the opportunity to work together on a project in Germany some time back. From Accenture, she moved to A1 Telekom Austria Group, where she held different roles in several countries, among other things, building billing and collections operations in startup mobile operators in Serbia and Macedonia. In 2013, she moved not only jobs, but actually countries by taking the role of Director of Financial Services at Telenor Group in Oslo, Norway, developing Telenor's business of mobile financial services in Eastern Europe and Asia. In 2018, she made another big switch by moving from the telecommunications industry to Nordea, the largest financial services group in the Nordic region, where she worked on optimizing and digitizing operations as the head of core transformation and member of the executive management team of Nordea's life and pensions company in Norway. Nowadays, she's at TOMRA, a provider of solutions that enable the circular economy with advanced collection and sorting systems that optimize resource recovery and minimize waste in the food, recycling, and mining industries. At TOMRA, she holds the role of VP Operations for TOMRA Textiles, and she's currently building a new venture for TOMRA, turning textile waste into a valuable resource for fiber-to-fiber recycling. She actually speaks 7 languages in addition to English, German, Norwegian, and Italian. She can have conversations in Serbian, French, and Spanish. I guess I will not test that today, and we will stick with English, but you never know where the conversation leads us. Welcome to the show, Johanna Stemberger.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. And maybe to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about TOMRA and the work you're doing in the textile space? I guess most people will know TOMRA primarily from the reverse vending machines for cans and bottles, but I understand the solutions TOMRA offers are much broader and much more diverse, and you're specifically now looking at the textile.
Yes, sure. So TOMRA is a really exciting player. So I describe them as global technology leader for sensor-based sorting solutions with the goal of turning waste into resource, or with the goal to avoid waste in the first place. As you correctly pointed out, it all started in the 1970s when two brothers in Asker, that's a town near Oslo, the capital of Norway, built the first reverse vending machine in the garage, I believe. So for local businesses to enable them for a better process to return bottles or cans. Mm-hmm. This is how it started. Nowadays, TOMRA's collection business unit, that's where the reverse vending business TOMRA has, collects over 45 billion containers annually worldwide. So reverse vending systems are rolled out from the USA and up to Australia. And every year there's more and more countries rolling out such solutions in order to reduce plastic waste. And this is a great reason to work for TOMRA alone. But it doesn't stop with containers and cans. TOMRA actually has two other divisions that are maybe less known here in the Nordic region, because most people would know the machines in the supermarkets where they weekly return the plastic bottles. There is a large division working on recycling, marketing recycling technology, sensor-based recycling technology. So what we do is market equipment that can sort waste streams such as plastics, wood, paper, others, metal, and sort in different fractions so they can be recycled. Because waste it's a crazy mix of a lot of different materials. So it's really necessary to have good professional sorting equipment in order to create resources for the next step in a circular economy, which is then a player taking those sorted fractions and turning it back into a resource for production. TOMRA Recycling is also operating globally. And there is a last division that least people know about, maybe. It's TOMRA Food. So here we don't work on turning waste into resource, but we market sorting solutions for avoiding food waste in the first place. So you have to imagine when fresh or frozen food is transported across the globe, there are large sorting centers and packaging centers where, for example, fruit or potatoes are sorted. And it's very important to, for instance, remove a moldy blueberry from a package so it doesn't destroy and contaminate the whole package. And these sensor-based solutions are also marketed by TOMRA globally.
Cool, excellent. I mean, and I think we've come a long way. I'm not sure if I ever told you, but back in the days when I was a student, I actually worked in a supermarket taking back bottles and cases for a living. So I was actually there taking the bottles and paying out the money for the people returning them. So since then, I think we've come a long way with technology and sensors being able to do all of that in a very efficient way.
Yeah, you've been replaced. You were replaced by our technology, and it goes as far as nowadays the new generation of these machines. You basically can come and just drop a whole plastic bag of bottles and cans into the machine and get the receipts. You don't even have to put in every single bottle and can, which can be quite time consuming, right? There's a lot that's happening in that space.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think it will accelerate going forward, isn't it? I mean, the development is so fast, and it's addressing more and more areas, like you said, food, reverse vending machines for cans and bottles, but also recycling, textiles, and all of these areas where the technology is actually taking the way we approach recycling, but also the other parts of a sustainable operation in a much more efficient way.
Yes, definitely. So it is important, and it doesn't stop there. So what TOMRA has done then recently is also look into the future. So what are new areas where such sensor-based technology or sorting is required in order to unlock circularity or to enable proper end-of-life treatment and potentially recycling of resources. And that's why TOMRA has created a new division, which is called Horizon, and that's where all the new business is summarized. And currently we have 3 ventures in that area, and TOMRA Textiles is one of them. And we'll talk more about this in this episode. But we also have 2 other ventures, so new business areas that are being built. We are treated like startups within the group, one is working on solutions for reducing single-use plastics. So it's a circular solution for, let's say, your coffee cup, or hopefully other single-use plastics. It's a huge litter problem in any European and probably cities beyond. And another venture we have is also working on closing the gap in plastic circularity, because the recycling rate for plastics, although well established, all processes are well established, but it's still, it needs to be much higher. That's our sister venture. TOMRA Feedstock is working on those. So each of those will be worth a whole episode on circularity, but I'm very much looking forward to talk more about textiles today with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe before we go there, I mean, before joining TOMRA, you held various roles in the telecommunications industry, in the financial services industry. What made you switch to TOMRA? Another very different industry, and how do you feel your previous experiences can be helpful in this new role?
Yeah, it was not easy, because I've passed my 40th birthday, right? And then I had a very interesting, rewarding management position in a great life and pension plan in Norway, part of Nordea Group. So it was not, I wasn't out there looking for new challenges in different industries. But when I was approached with this opportunity, it was just good to be true. I couldn't say no. And that's for three main reasons. The first one is that what I really enjoy doing is to build operations for a new business area. I've done this in the mobile business. I've built new subsidiaries abroad, new processes, new operations. I've done this in a way in banking, where I've looked, it's an existing business area, but I worked on making operations more effective and digitizing and changing the whole platform the company was operating on. And it's something I simply love doing. So building something new, connecting experts, creating processes, creating operations, that's what I love doing. And that was an opportunity to build something in the group. Secondly, of course, to be part of circularity, to be part of enabling a circular solution for textiles, which is maybe the last huge household waste stream that we in Europe haven't covered currently. We collect our plastic cups, we collect paper separately, but textiles, we don't so much. So being part of solving that problem and enabling recycling was something extremely motivating that I really felt like being part of. And I know recycling, and it's important to say, it's not, we can't recycle our way out of the issue we have with all of our resources and the waste we're creating. But still, we need to ensure a proper end-of-life treatment of what we're using, or worse, just buying, producing, and maybe not even using. And being part of that was truly motivating. The third reason is TOMRA as an employer. It's a great company. It's international. It's huge. It's stock listed in Norway. And we're a community across the globe. But TOMRA calls all employees resource revolutionaries. And this is not just employer branding. This really comes from the heart. I experience a drive for innovation, a lot of passion for what we're working with, and everyone is cheering to each other. So there is no competition in between divisions. And as I've probably it's often existing in other large players, it's really a great community of people being driven by what the company is trying to solve. And that alone was a reason to really step out from my role that I had last year and join TOMRA in their new startup for textiles.
Oh, great to hear. And I think it definitely sounds like a very interesting new opportunity to learn, but also create impact in that context. Now, TOMRA has been a pioneer, I would say, in the reverse vending machine market and has had a huge impact in that. But as you said, I mean, TOMRA has very ambitious targets also in a lot of other areas. You mentioned textile, but food, plastics, and so on. Let's switch gears and let's look at the fashion industry. The fashion industry is a major contributor, as you already mentioned, to global carbon emissions and other negative impacts on the environment, on societies. How is TOMRA Textiles looking to contribute to basically reducing this negative impact and maybe on the other side create a positive impact?
Yes, so looking at the textile industry, we see that it's a major polluter, as you said. And one of the reasons was the growth that the textile industry and also as part of that, the fashion industry experienced during the past years. And we just had to think back how our parents treated clothing, or it was how we were taught to treat our garments when we were children. It's different now. We came from long-term use and garments that we inherit from generation to generation to almost single-use fashion. I mean, there's a lot of statistics how garments are not worn or just a couple of times, but I think everyone can just have a look at themselves and say, okay, how often have you worn this blouse you're just currently wearing? How often have you been wearing it? How many items do you have in the closet that you haven't been wearing at all? Everyone has those. So there's a large waste problem from the textile or the fashion industry. And the figures that we see, it's about 8 million tons of textile waste to be expected in Europe. Some say 10 million, some say more. So there's even no figures about the problem that we can use. There's no concrete statistics or very exact statistics about it. So that's a problem. There's a problem to solve. That's the first thing that TOMRA looked at, said, okay, is there a problem to solve? Yes, definitely there is. The second thing is, do we have something to contribute with our experience and our technology solutions to solve it? And when we look at our experience from plastic sorting and sorting other waste fractions, the answer is yes, definitely. There is a contribution TOMRA can do in terms of closing the gap in between the crazy mix of unsorted textile waste and the emerging textile to textile recycling community, those players who want to take in raw material that stems from textile waste and produce new fiber out of it. And there's a step in between that's really important, and that's the sorting. That's sorting capacity that needs to take in all this waste, sort it in different fractions, purify it, for instance, remove the buttons, remove the zippers, remove anything that cannot be recycled, and then provide pure material, raw material to the recycling industries. And looking at our technology solutions for other materials and looking at the first pilots with textile sorting, TOMRA definitely has something to contribute here, and that's when the company sat down and said, okay, let's do something about it. Let's build a business around it. So what we envision now is really secure, effective, and also efficient end-of-life treatment of textiles, and to enable the textile recycling business by providing them pure feedstock they can trust for their chemical or mechanical recycling processes.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's important to basically create solutions that are efficient and that make it possible for companies to take into use without major investments or without basically major additional costs, because otherwise they are not working in today's world. And as you mentioned, there's not one single solution. I think we have to work on reducing the waste streams, but also then make use of the waste streams. And I think it's in one of the previous episodes, Ben Maitland actually said in a different context, but I think it also applies here. There's no silver bullet, but there's silver buckshot. So you need to basically explore different options, different paths in order to solve the problem that we have today. Could you maybe explain a little bit how TOMRA's technology works in that context, in the textile sorting process, making it efficient, making it basically usable in this rather fast-moving environment of textiles?
Yeah, sure. So we can look at what's coming in at one end. So if we build sorting capacity, so we have the technology, but we also want to contribute more and really enable sorting capacity in Europe or the USA for sorting textile waste. So let's look first at the site, what comes into such a sorting facility. If we envision this like a little factory with a lot of equipment that's processing this waste. On the one hand, we need to ensure that there is all the collected textiles. Currently in Europe, we see about 30 to 40% maximum are collected. This is planned to be increased by the European Union by new regulation coming into force next year, that we take in the textile waste. And then in order to decide, can this be recycled and which recycler can use this material, you need to have very precise sorting for the material composition. So is it cotton? Is it polyester? Is it man-made cellulosic fibers, so viscose or others? Is it wool? Is it a mix? Is elastane in it? Yes. If yes, how much? Etc., etc. Because the textile recyclers on the other end, especially if they're chemical, the processes are very often very sensitive to polluters or materials they can't process. So they need to be able to trust the composition. And here we are using the near infrared scanners and sensor-based technology we're also using for other materials, where we basically, you can imagine there's a conveyor belt coming and the surface of an item is scanned, and then our technology would know, okay, this is 30% cotton, 70% polyester, and it can also be sorted by color. And then we can sort into different fractions that then can be further processed and be supplied to the right recycler after that. It doesn't stop with sorting, though. I think it's very important to say we need further processing here. So we're also looking at building an end-to-end solution here, because a sorted garment alone is not enough. And that's maybe a big difference between a garment and a plastic bottle, because you have several layers, you have buttons, you have zippers, you have prints, you have a variety of materials and components that are part of a garment. And I wasn't even aware of that. I'm very much aware of it now, because you look at the garment as a whole, but when we look at it as a mix of materials, there's further purification needed. So we need to automatically remove buttons, remove zippers, so identify prints, for example, that would disturb a recycling process, and remove these parts of the garment to create a pure fraction again for the recycler. This has to be fully automated. So the important part here is the volume and the scale. Nowadays, we see a lot of manual sorting of textiles, and this is mainly happening in the area where we currently collect all textiles. That's donations to NGOs or to other businesses, who then make a living or finance the projects by reselling these garments. There's nothing wrong with reselling or reuse. It's actually a very, very important part of the waste hierarchy and should always come before recycling. The issue we see now that it's simply too much, and we don't even find markets for all of these clothes that are currently collected. And there is great experts collecting manually, often in 300, 500, 600 fractions, to decide then which garments are broken and should rather be recycled, and which ones can be resold in which country of the world or in which area. But what we hear also, it's simply too much to be processed. That's one area we want to tackle. So there's maybe it's worth, instead of sending a certain garment 3 times around the world before we find someone who maybe wants to wear it, maybe a cheap T-shirt should rather be then recycled in the region, right? That's a question that many stakeholders address now. The other issue is that we see that with purely manual sorting, we can't be as precise as we need to be in order to enable recycling. Because, for example, the sewing threads, they are mostly polyester. So if you have a T-shirt 100% cotton or a jeans 100% cotton, you would still see with our technologies, you scan it and you see a color for cotton and a color for polyester, and then you immediately spot the polyester, which is a sewing thread or a little piece, maybe at the edge of your jeans pockets or something. So that's if somebody wants to mechanically recycle pure cotton, we have to remove this in order to have a good quality of the output material. That's another reason why automation is so important here, to get to the right quality. And then it's simply scale. We talk about sorting 4 to 5 tons per hour. You can't do this with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an efficiency, it's a scale question, it's a quality question. So from that point of view, I think technology will play a very critical role in that context. At the same time, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why we're very often discussing about the fact that circularity is not by default sustainable. If you look at transportation, if you look at other means of basically making things reusable, refurbishing, and so on, it will always be a balance between going the recycling path or going the reuse path. And it's not an automatism that one is better than the other by default. I think it's a use case driven, or is a case by case decision that needs to be made in that context. And just looking at the amount of clothes that we need to sort through, I think automation is the must here. Now, you talked about the different types of fibers. What are some of the challenges in dealing with today's wide range of synthetic polymer-based and blended fibers, and how do you address that at TOMRA with your technology? What are some of the important steps to address these challenges in that process that you're looking at, in order to make sure that the quality at the end is good enough for the recyclers to then really start their part of the process?
The main challenge, I think, is from our perspective. I can, of course, only mostly talk about end-of-life treatment and recycling. Yeah. That's what we work with. The main challenge here is that garments are not designed for recycling in the first place. So, but we see a lot of brands gearing up in that space, and designers starting to be interested in, okay, how can I design for durability so people can wear a garment as long as possible. That also implies reuse, and then also how to recycle it. And designers want to get educated. And that's the main challenge, because what we see as you said, the crazy mix of garments coming in. And there's for sure good reasons why all the materials are mixed in a certain item. But then again, when we look at the recycling technologies we currently have mechanical recycling of cotton. There is equipment and technology. It's used. It's existing. It's used in India. It's used in Turkey. It's used around the globe, where you can basically reopen the cotton fibers again and spin new yarn. And deliver those open fibers to spinning. This part of the industry is growing, and there used to be a quality issue. What I hear a lot is, yeah, but that fiber is shorter than natural fibers, so we can't recycle it. But there's a lot of people doing great work in improving. Every week, almost currently, things are happening in improving this part of the business. The other part we have is chemical recycling. Here we see a lot of players emerging on the polyester front. So you can pure polyester. There are technologies to recycle that, and people are looking into taking in blends, so cotton polyester blends, and recycling those. And then it's great to see investment in players. There was a major moment in the industry when Renewcell, one of the very first players in recycling cotton into cellulosic fiber, Circulose was the product. The product is still there, but the company unfortunately went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of analysis about that case, and it's not me to judge now, but some say it was just simply too early out. But it just shows how hard it is to build a new industry, and how hard it is, because you need to invest and build operations and build a whole infrastructure in the first place. And what you're competing with is a highly efficient value chain with production in Asia, mainly, and consumption, mass consumption all around the globe, and all the logistics behind it, and all the low margins. Everything works perfectly. So it's very hard to compete with that industry. So that's what we see. But still, the good news is we do see a lot of investment in these kind of players who have chemical recycling processes for cotton, turning them into a viscose-like material, or to recycle polyester. But still, we have a large amount of garments that we don't know how to recycle into new textiles. So here, there's other applications we have to think about. And I still think it's better to have textiles maybe as isolation in buildings where they're there for 50 years plus, or furniture, carpets. The car industry is a larger off-taker of these kind of non-woven fibers that can be made out of the rest. But here the industry is also in the beginning. So here is a lot of applications for textile waste, or recycling or downcycling of textile waste into new applications that's necessary in order to handle the waste stream. So to come back to your questions, there's lots of issues, but looking from an end-of-life perspective, I think it's important that onwards design for recycling becomes natural to any designer. Because any designer in the end, when we market products stemming from textile waste, they will be presented with the new fiber of what they designed 5 to 10 years ago. So they need to be ready to use this again in new designs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it supports again the topic that we've been discussing so often here on the podcast, that circularity is not just a topic for the end of life. It's basically a topic that needs to be considered throughout the process, from the design through production, and then into reuse, into the end of life, into recycling. And in parallel to that, we basically need to think across industries in that context. As you said, recycled material might not end up in the same circle, but it might actually end up in other industries, in other use cases in that context. And it's important to broaden our perspective in this context across the value chain, but also across different industries.
Yeah, then there's something, I mean, we spoke about scale and the processes and industrialization of the processes behind it. And maybe scale volume is also a topic we all need to think, especially in the global north, can we consume a bit less?
Yes.
It will also make it easier to handle and to establish that industry. It's something we all need to ask ourselves. And this is not only true for textiles. I think it's true for many, many materials and many items we're using in our daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the coffee is empty, Johanna, but before I let you go, I still have one question. Now, considering the expected growth in post-consumer textile waste, and I agree with you, we should reduce consumption, but there's many factors that are driving a growth in the consumption of textiles, and we will see that for the years to come. And looking at TOMRA's vision to basically transform how society can obtain, use, and reuse our planet's natural resources, what are TOMRA's plans for the future, specifically TOMRA Textiles' plan for the future? I noticed, for example, your partnership with Circle 8 to explore solutions for UK circular textile ecosystem. What's the plan? What's in the future for TOMRA Textiles?
So we're currently in the beginning of our internal startup operations, or the startup of TOMRA Textiles, and our partnership or our cooperation with Circle 8 in the UK is just an example of how we now explore different markets and what would be the best solution and the right technical setup to build sorting capacity for textile waste. That's one example. And working with Circle 8 is a great community of people, and it's a great company who gathered the whole industry in the UK, from brands to others, on trying to solve that problem. So that's a very interesting partner to work with. And there are others, and we're working also on several European regions currently. So our plans now are, we also have to look at what do we need forward? What does this industry need forward? So one thing is we need regulation to get going. And I think it has to do with what you mentioned before, that there is investment. It's people ask, when will recycled materials have the same price as a virgin material? Well, how is that possible if you have a highly efficient value chain grown over many years? I was told by a researcher, Lutz Walter, that the last introduction of new fiber is about 60 years ago to the textile industry. So there's an industry not really prone to change, that we haven't learned to introduce new materials and new infrastructures every other year. 60 years is quite a long time. So this requires investment, this requires change. This will be smaller volumes to start with, but they will be big. But in order to get going, we need the regulation. So we're looking closely at what's happening at European level, but also at national level. And when regulation is there, I think it's the right time to really start and scale capacity. What we also need is cooperation with partners along the value chain. So we can't do this alone. We are ready to partner up with players upstream, downstream, people who have infrastructure available, waste managers, so people who want to solve the same problem. And this is also, we're currently having a lot of discussions with various potential partners to see how can we get together and build sorting capacity and connect the dots between waste and the waste management sector on the one hand and the textile production industry or the fashion industry on the other side. So it's regulation and partnerships we're working closely at. And then we also invest now, and we'll work a lot on developing our technology further for textiles, because yes, we can use the sorters, we also use for other materials, but there is a lot of incremental innovation, I'd say, necessary in order to come to really effective and efficient solutions for post-consumer waste. And that's something we're going to focus a lot about. So I hope that you are going to hear more about TOMRA Textiles and about our concrete projects in the future, because this will also mean that we see this industry finally arising.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Johanna. Really looking forward to follow TOMRA Textiles path going forward, because I think it is an important area where we need to get to similar levels that we have today in the cans and bottles area, where I think we have high rates of recycling actually as it stands today. And as you said, I mean, it's an interplay between regulation, between companies, between new technology that is introduced along the way in order to actually make this happen. Thanks a lot, Johanna, for joining me today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Now, for all of you listening out there, as always, we hope today's episode brought you some new perspectives, some new insights, some new ideas. If you like the podcast, you can help us grow the Circular Coffee Break community by giving us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcast and Spotify or any other podcasting platform you're using, and by spreading the word and sharing the episodes and the messages we have on social media. Also remember to subscribe to stay in the loop on new episodes that will actually drop every 2 weeks. And I had the opportunity to talk with some of the future guests already in some of the briefing meetings we had, and I'm really excited because there will be a lot of really interesting topics and new perspectives coming up in the future episodes. Now, the only thing left is to thank you for listening and being part of the Circular Coffee Break today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all here at the Circular Coffee Break podcast.